Let me ask you something that might sting a little. Do the people in your life truly appreciate you? Or have you become so reliable, so constant, so always there that they've started taking you for granted? Here's an uncomfortable truth most of us don't want to face. In this world, consistency can sometimes become invisibility. When you're always available, always working hard, always showing up, people stop noticing. They stop appreciating. You become like the air they breathe, essential, but completely unnoticed until it's gone. But here's where it gets tricky, and this is what today's story is really about. What happens when you try to prove your worth by disappearing? What happens when you play games to make people realize your value? What happens when you confuse being indispensable with being irreplaceable? Today, I'm going to share a story that will challenge everything you think you know about hard work, recognition, and success. It's about a young man who learned a powerful lesson the hard way. It's about a mentor who taught half a truth. And it's about a principle that could either make you invaluable in your workplace or get you replaced entirely. If you've ever felt undervalued at work, if you've ever wondered why less talented people get promoted while you stay stuck, if you've ever thought about quitting just to show them how much they need you, this story will change your perspective forever. Stay with me because what you're about to learn isn't taught in business schools or written in self-help books. This is real wisdom learned through real pain. The young man was 22 years old when he first walked through the heavy metal doors of the factory. The factory was massive. Rows of machinery humming, sparks flying from welding stations, the smell of oil and metal hanging thick in the air. It was intimidating, overwhelming, and exciting all at once. The young apprentice had grown up poor. His father had worked in a similar factory until an accident forced him into early retirement. He had watched his mother struggle to make ends meet, working 2 jobs just to keep food on the table. He had made himself a promise. He would work harder than anyone else. He would become so skilled, so valuable, that he would never face the uncertainty his parents had faced. On his first day, the young man was assigned to work under the elderly craftsman, a legend in his own right. The old master was 63 years old, with calloused hands that told stories of 40 years in manufacturing. He was the master craftsman, the one everyone turned to when a problem seemed unsolvable. Machines that other technicians gave up on would somehow come back to life under the elderly craftsman's expert touch. The old master was quiet, methodical, and deeply respected. He didn't waste words, and he didn't suffer fools. But when he looked at the young apprentice, he saw something. A hunger, a determination that reminded him of his younger self. 3 months into working together, as they were finishing up a particularly complex repair job late one evening, the elderly craftsman turned to the young man and said something that would shape the next decade of his life. "Son," the old master said, wiping grease from his hands, "I'm going to teach you something that took me 20 years to understand. Are you listening?" The young apprentice nodded eagerly. "Yes, sir. Always." "Good." The elderly craftsman pulled up 2 stools and they sat facing each other under the harsh fluorescent lights. "You want to succeed here? You want to become irreplaceable? Then learn this, work with complete focus. Don't waste time in gossip or politics. Don't chase attention. Instead, make yourself the absolute best at everything this factory needs. Learn every machine. Master every technique. Become so skilled that no one, and I mean no one, can do what you do." The young man was writing notes in his mind, absorbing every word. "But here's the key," the old master continued, his voice dropping lower. "You know what happens to a lamp that's always on? Nobody notices it. It just sits there, glowing day after day, and people walk past it without a second thought. But the moment that lamp goes out, suddenly, everyone notices. Everyone realizes what they had." He let that sink in for a moment. "You understand what I'm saying? Make yourself so valuable that your absence is felt immediately. That's when they'll truly appreciate what you bring to this place." The young apprentice felt like he'd been given a secret formula for success. This wasn't just advice, this was wisdom. He shook his mentor's hand firmly and said, "Thank you, sir. I won't forget this." And he didn't forget. For the next 10 years, the young man followed the elderly craftsman's advice to the letter. When the old master retired at 65, The young technician naturally took his place as the senior master technician. He worked with laser focus. He avoided office politics. He learned every single machine in that factory until he could fix them blindfolded. He took complex technical courses on his own time. He became, without question, the most skilled technician the factory had ever seen. But something was wrong. As the young man sat in his small apartment one evening, looking at his paycheck, a bitter feeling rose in his chest. His salary had barely increased since he'd taken over the elderly craftsman's position. Meanwhile, people he'd trained, technicians who didn't have half his skill, were being promoted to supervisory roles with better pay and benefits. He couldn't understand it. He had done everything right. He was the best. Everyone knew it. So why wasn't he being rewarded? The frustration built up until he decided to visit his old mentor. The elderly craftsman was enjoying retirement in a modest house on the edge of town, spending his days in a woodworking shop he'd built in his garage. When the young man arrived, the old master immediately noticed the tension in his former student's shoulders, the tightness around his eyes. "What's troubling you, son?" the elderly craftsman asked, setting down his sandpaper. The young man couldn't hold it back. The words poured out. "I followed everything you taught me. Everything. I work harder than anyone. I'm better than anyone. I don't waste time talking. I just do the work. But people who can't do half of what I do are getting promoted. My salary is barely better than it was when I was your assistant. I don't understand. What am I doing wrong?" The elderly craftsman studied him carefully. "Do you truly believe you're important to that factory?" "Yes," the young man said without hesitation. "I know I am. They couldn't run without me." The old master was quiet for a long moment, then said, "Then do something for me. Tomorrow take a day off. Make up an excuse, say you're sick, or you have a family emergency. You need to rest anyway. You look exhausted." The young man was confused by the advice but trusted his mentor. "Okay, if you think that will help." The next day, the young technician called in sick. When he returned to work the following morning, he was immediately summoned to the manager's office. The manager looked stressed. "We need you here. Yesterday was chaos. That hydraulic press broke down again, and nobody could fix it. The conveyor system started making that noise you always somehow stop. We lost 4 hours of production. You're too valuable to this operation." Within the week, the young man received his first real raise in years, along with a promotion to senior master technician with a small team under him. He was ecstatic. The elderly craftsman's wisdom had worked like magic. The lamp going out, people finally noticed, so he did it again. A month later, he took another day off. Same result: panic, production issues, and when he returned, more appreciation, more respect. This became his strategy. Whenever he felt undervalued, whenever he saw someone less skilled getting recognition, the young technician would take a day off. And like clockwork, the factory would struggle, and he would return to find the situation tilted more in his favor. For 6 months, this pattern continued. The young man felt smart. He felt like he'd finally cracked the code. Then came the day that shattered everything. The young technician arrived at the factory on a Monday morning, ready to work, only to find his access card didn't work. The security guard looked uncomfortable as he said, "Sorry, you need to go to HR." Confused and increasingly worried, the young man walked to the HR office. The HR director looked at him with a mixture of professional detachment and what might have been sympathy. "We're letting you go. Effective immediately. You'll receive 2 weeks severance." The world seemed to stop. "What? Why? There must be some mistake. I'm the best technician you have." The HR director slid a folder across the desk. "You're skilled, yes, but your attendance has become unreliable. In the past 6 months, you've taken 11 unscheduled days off. Production has suffered repeatedly. We've hired 2 new technicians who, while not quite at your level individually, work together consistently. We can rely on them. We can't rely on you anymore." The young man left the building in a daze. How had this happened? He'd only been following the wisdom the elderly craftsman had shared. He drove straight to his old mentor's house, anger and confusion swirling inside him. He burst into the garage without knocking. "Why did I get fired?" the young man demanded, his voice cracking with emotion. "I did exactly what you told me. The lamp that goes out gets noticed. You said that yourself." The elderly craftsman put down his tools slowly and looked at his former student with sadness in his eyes. "Sit down, son. I don't want to sit. I want answers. I followed your advice and lost my job." "Son." The old master's voice was firm but gentle. "Sit down." The young man collapsed onto a workbench stool, his head in his hands. The elderly craftsman pulled up another stool and sat across from him, just like they had 10 years ago. "You learned half the lesson. Only half. And a half-truth can be more dangerous than a complete lie." "What are you talking about?" "I told you that a lamp that's always on gets taken for granted. That's true. I told you that when it goes out, people notice. That's also true. But my boy, you were in such a hurry to apply that wisdom that you never let me finish the complete lesson." The young man looked up, tears of frustration in his eyes. The elderly craftsman continued, his voice heavy with regret. "The second part of the lesson, the part one should have made clearer, is this. If a lamp keeps going out again and again, eventually it will be replaced. Because who wants a lamp they cannot depend on? Who wants a light source that fails when you need it most?" The words hit the young man like a physical blow. You became unreliable. And in the professional world, unreliability is a death sentence, no matter how talented you are. Companies don't just want skill. They want consistency. They want dependability. They want someone who will be there when they're needed, not someone who plays games to prove their worth. The old master stood up and placed a hand on his former student's shoulder. "I failed you, son. I taught you to make yourself valuable, but I didn't teach you to make yourself trusted. Those are two very different things. And without trust, value means nothing." The young man sat in silence, processing the truth of his mentor's words. Finally, he spoke quietly. "So what should I have done?" "You should have done your excellent work consistently, yes. But you also should have made sure people saw that work. Not by disappearing, but by communicating. By building relationships. By documenting your contributions. By teaching others, not hoarding knowledge. By being present not just physically, but in meetings, in discussions about the factory's future." The elderly craftsman sat back down. "Here's what I've learned in all my years. Life, whether at work or at home, requires balance. Yes, make yourself valuable. Yes, develop skills others don't have. But also be reliable. Be present. Be someone people can count on without question." He paused, then added something that the young man would remember forever. "Think about the people in your own life. Your family, your friends. Don't you sometimes take them for granted because they're always there? And wouldn't you regret it terribly if they were suddenly gone? But imagine if someone you loved kept leaving and coming back, just to remind you they were important. Eventually, you'd stop trusting them. You'd protect your heart. You'd start looking for someone more stable. That's what happened to you at the factory. You taught them they couldn't rely on you, so they found someone they could. This story teaches us something that could transform not just your career, but every relationship in your life. The lesson is this: your value isn't proven by your absence. It's proven by the quality of your presence. Think about that for a moment. In our desperate need to be recognized, to be appreciated, to be valued, we sometimes make a fatal mistake. We think that if we withdraw, if we disappear, if we make people feel our absence, they'll finally realize what they had. Sometimes that works. For a moment, people panic. They scramble. They promise changes. But if you keep doing it, if you keep playing that game, you don't become irreplaceable, you become unreliable. And in a world where trust is everything, unreliability is unforgivable. Here's what you need to understand. In your workplace, in your relationships, in your family, people need to know you'll be there. Not just sometimes. Not just when it's convenient. Not just when you feel appreciated. They need to know they can count on you, period. That doesn't mean you should let yourself be taken advantage of. That doesn't mean you shouldn't demand fair treatment and recognition. But there's a right way and a wrong way to claim your value. The wrong way is manipulation. playing games, disappearing to teach lessons, creating crises to prove you're needed. The right way is excellence plus consistency plus communication. Do outstanding work, do it reliably, and make sure people understand what you contribute. Document your impact, share your knowledge, build relationships, be present in every sense of the word. Remember, a lamp that shines consistently becomes the light people trust. And trust, my friend, is worth more than any temporary burst of recognition. So here's my challenge to you. Stop waiting to be noticed. Stop playing games to prove your worth. Instead, commit to being so consistently excellent, so reliably present, so genuinely valuable that your contribution becomes undeniable. Not because you disappeared, but because you showed up fully every single day. And in your personal life, don't wait for people to leave before you appreciate them. Don't take your family for granted because they're always there. Tell them today. Show them today. Let them know their value while they're present, not after they're gone. Balance. That's the secret. Balance between being valuable and being reliable. Balance between confidence and humility. Balance between demanding recognition and earning trust. If the story opened your eyes, share it with someone who needs this lesson. Comment below with your thoughts. Have you ever felt undervalued? Have you ever made the mistake the young man made? Let's learn from each other. Hit that like button if you believe that true success comes not from playing games, but from genuine, consistent excellence. We'll see you in the next story with another powerful life lesson. Until then, remember, don't just be the lamp that occasionally goes out to get attention. Be the lamp that shines so consistently, so brightly, that people can't imagine darkness without you. Your value is real. Your presence matters. But only if you show up fully, consistently, and authentically every single day.